Aloha! Welcome back to my channel. In this week's video, I'm going to be riding the wake of my last video I uploaded, which was Intro to Archetypes. I'll try to put it in the cards up here for you to click on. So we're just going to be picking up from that video, and today I'm going to get more into what I've labeled as the Archetype Starter Kit based on Carolyn Mace's book Sacred Contracts. I think last video I kept saying soul contracts and it's actually sacred contracts. So based on Carolyn Mace's book, and then also my own work in this field and subject matter. So I hope you stay tuned and keep watching to learn what I'm talking about as far as what the heck is your Archetype Starter Kit or Starter Pack. So I hope you stick around. Hey, thanks for coming back. Alright, well, coming back or keeping watching. That's what I meant. Alright, so just to hop right into it. The Archetype Starter Kit. So basically, again, going off of Carolyn Mace's work and the book Sacred Contracts, she explains in that book that we, being people as humans, as we are as our souls are incarnating into this earth plane, earth dimension, whatever you want to call it, our souls basically choose from all of the archetypes that exist and have been created by humanity, and basically we're picking a stack of 12. So this is essentially what I was referencing in the last video is what's referred to as our soul blueprint. So most of us have 12 archetypes. Occasionally I have found some people have 13, and that usually, actually I'll explain that when I get to the first archetype of the Archetypal Starter Kit. So the 4 archetypes, I don't think I've said that yet. So there's 4 archetypes in our starter kit. And these are 4 archetypes that all humans are, that we're all born with. So basically when our souls are picking our archetypes, we all have this default foundation. So kind of think of like a pyramid. Pyramid has 4 corners to the base, to the foundation. So those 4 archetypes set the foundation for the overall human experience. So basically as we're incarnating as souls into this earth realm with what I believe is our fullest intention of even incarnating into the earth realm, which is to learn about life through the human experience. And so one of those core foundations or foundational archetypes is the child archetype. So the child archetype is the only archetype within all of the archetypes that actually have 6 subcategories. So our first child subcategory is the, I'm kind of wondering now if this is a bad idea, because I feel like you're going to see everything backwards. Anyhow, if that's the case, this is the Eternal Child archetype card I'm holding up. So I'll just bend over and pick it up, not that big of a deal. So in my thumbnail I was holding up this. This is basically a tarot deck. Again, I don't even know why because as I'm looking at it, it looks like it's going to be backwards, so whatever. Anyhow, this is Carolyn Mace's tarot deck that she's created for archetypes and for all of the archetypes that basically were in that book. I was talking about the Sacred Contracts book. So basically she's taken all the archetypes from that book in text, threw them on individual cards, so that way when either somebody who's actually doing these kinds of readings professionally, it makes it much easier to have a tarot deck to do this kind of work from than, say, trying to just either pull things from memory or going to the book and doing the work that way. So I love this deck. This is one of my favorite decks. So anyhow, the eternal sidetrack. No, Sarah gets sidetracked? Not at all. Eternal child. So, sorry, let me backtrack a little bit. The one thing in common that all the child archetypes have are that they're children. Okay, so this was the book that I was trying to talk about last time. This is Sacred Contracts. I'm not going to get full on into what each separate child archetype is about, but I will just kind of name all 6 just to name them so that you all are familiar. But just to, sort of spit out what Carolyn Mace's main bullet points on the child archetype were. So everyone has expressions of each one of these aspects of the child within his or her psyche. So each aspects meaning the 6 subtypes, which I haven't gotten into yet. So basically, even if, say, you, an individual, have one, which most people do, just have one subtype of the child archetype in their soul blueprint, we all still play with the attributes of all the child archetypes. So say somebody could be, I think the first one that I pointed out was the eternal child. So say somebody has the eternal child as far as in their blueprint, but we could still be kind of having to deal with all of the other child archetypes. So that's what she's talking about there. So just kind of going over main attributes that of a child that are, easy to point out, such as immaturity, ignorance, especially ignorance when it comes to the human way. But we also have positive attributes of children, such as playful, willingness to forgive easily, much more easier than we do as adults. And so there's all kinds of attributes of children that we can absolutely think of when it comes to the child archetype. So anyhow, that is one of our core essential archetypes to our Archetypal Starter Kit. And then so the one that I mentioned before was the Eternal Child. We also have the Magical Child. And then we also have our Nature Child, the Wounded Child, the Divine Child, and then the Orphan Child. When I think I was saying earlier that I have found in my own work and working with clients, that most people, so verifying and validating Carolyn Mace's work and her claims that we have 12 archetypes that make up our soul blueprint. I, however, occasionally find some people have 2 child subtypes, child archetype, that basically occasionally I found that some people have 2 child why am I getting hung up on how to say that? 2 subtypes of the child archetype. Oh my god, I finally got it out. Okay, victory is mine. I'm a winner. So that's the child, and the the point too of even getting into all this, again, like I was mentioning in that last video, that archetypes exist on a spectrum. So they have definitely positive or more divine attributes, and then they have negative or more shadow attributes. And as we look at ourselves through the lens of each of these archetypes, it's our duty to look at ourselves in the patterns that exist within ourselves that are correlated or tied to that archetype, and then also to distinguish and discern, are any of those existing patterns of yours basically serving your highest and greatest good. And if they're not, then so we would say that you're probably somewhere in the spectrum of the shadow attributes, and our goal that would then be to move into the light or the divine attributes. Because again, we're always trying to, this is from a spirit perspective, but we're always trying to do things ultimately that are for our highest and greatest good. So our next archetype, and I'm kind of going in somewhat of an order, and in a different either video, I'll probably in a different video touch on some more archetypes and archetypal patterns as they relate to the chakras and the chakra system. So anyhow, kind of going in somewhat of an order, if we would be going in the order of chakras. Right, so our next one is we've got the Victim Archetype. So again, these are all archetypes we all have to deal with and face and confront and move out of any shadow attributes that we might be exuding or emitting or living by, and move to those divine or positive attributes. So the thing with the victim is that we all have the potential to be victimized, and to easily fall into shadow victim patterns. And so, the main attribute, or not attribute, the main purpose of the victim archetype is to teach us that we are not a victim of life, that we are co-creators of our life. And just by that right of being a co-creator, inherently takes away any victimhood. However, we can still be an actual victim in a moment of, say, a perpetrator committing a crime, committing some kind of ethical violation. So in a moment, we can absolutely experience victimhood. However, it's this archetype that is essentially trying to get us to transform in how we're connecting, relating, and even holding on to these experiences. And this is, again, for our highest and greatest good, to self-actualize and become more spiritualized. So that's the victim archetype. This next archetype I actually briefly mentioned in my last video. So this is the prostitute archetype. She's actually one of my favorites. Not because I'm like a massive fan of prostitutes, although I don't have anything against prostitutes, but she's my favorite in that when I get to reveal her to people, there's almost inevitably some kind of uncomfortableness and kind of gasp with a lot of people, because we tend to associate a prostitute to sex. So the prostitute archetype actually has nothing to do with sex and everything to do with faith. She's actually the guardian of faith. And so again, I'm kind of giving another little hint, I guess, to some things coming down the pike in the future. But the prostitute, her main goal for us to experience life through the lens of the prostitute is, do we have enough faith in ourselves and our higher power to never feel the need to sell out for our own well-being and security, especially financial security. So she's all about guarding us from selling ourselves out to another person or people or even things, especially in the name of financial security. So that is a huge one, especially because in the modern world, especially if you live in a first world country, money is the main resource that most of us actually have to have in order to live and to live comfortably. And so getting in touch with this archetype will start to show you where you are maybe selling a piece of yourself or a lot of pieces of yourself just to gain some kind of financial security. And so she's a deep one. She's a real deep one. And I really encourage you all to just start playing with these, especially this starter kit, right? Because this is the foundation. We are all dealing with these archetypes, and they have a lot to teach us. All right. And our last archetype is the Saboteur. I don't know why I flicked it hard like that, like it's serious business. Saboteur. All right, so the Saboteur archetype is an archetype that does exist actually up here in the higher chakra centers, especially third eye, crown chakra. And it has everything to do with our gaining wisdom and utilizing our intellect, so our logic and reasoning skills, even our higher intuitive skills and abilities, and utilizing those skills and abilities, again, for our highest and greatest good in life. With this one archetype being in our foundational setup, though, it's a little bit of a trickster in that we all have the potential to sabotage our own greatness, our goals in life, and basically anything that you set out to want to do, that we can sabotage ourselves right on out of it through either being in the shadow side of the Saboteur, and then also shadow side of any of the previous archetypes that we just hit on, or any one of the other numerous other archetypes that are in either our own personal blueprint, soul blueprint, but even if we don't have an archetypal pattern in our soul blueprint, we can still play and kind of like borrow archetypes in our lives. And so this is one that really gets people, because when we're sabotaging our own selves, we don't see it. At least most of us, and most of the time, we don't see it. We tend to be in, either to like the worst degree in a state of straight up denial, or we're just naive. And then there's obviously a spectrum in between those. So sabotaging the self is these are all challenging things to move through, but self-sabotage is it's a big one, and these are all big ones. That's why they're a part of our core foundational setup for how all of us humans are choosing, this is my belief system, choosing to incarnate into Earth and experience life, because these four archetypes do, if you really look at them, they do create a strong foundational contrast to really challenge a human being's spiritual enlightenment. And so this is why I love doing this kind of work, though, because I love a challenge. And so even from, looking at myself from an archetypal perspective, it doesn't feel good all the time to really look at yourself and to notice your shadows and to notice your demons and notice all the not so cheeky rosy things about yourself that maybe other people can more easily see. So that's where I get excited about this kind of work, is because too, I know I'm not the only one alone here, am a goal-oriented person. And so when I'm looking at myself through the lens of my archetypes and archetypal patterns, and not that I actually like logistically do this, but kind of more I take mental notes and I kind of plot and chart and course all the movement and the work that I've done in these archetypes to first observe my shadow patterns, but then, step by step, bit by bit, do what I need to do to move everything over here into the light or the divine attributes. I mean, it's some of the most fulfilling work that I've done in my life is growing spiritually. And so that's another reason why I really wanted to sit down and talk more about archetypes and archetypal patterns, because I think a lot of us are very goal-oriented, of course, but also like we want some kind of way to plot our progress. Not necessarily that we all want to plot it with like the same kind of charts or the same style, but to have some kind of way to reference what movement or growth or evolution that you've made and gone through. So with the archetypes, I see that is another thing that doing archetypal work can offer people, and it's a continuous system that can give you that feedback. And so anyhow, that's it. That's the basic archetypal starter kit. And so just to review, we had our child, and then the child had the 6 sub-archetypes. Maybe I'll kind of list everything over here or something. Let me know if you feel like it editing, Sarah. And then we had the victim, then we had the prostitute, and then we had the saboteur. So just getting started with your starter kit, I invite and challenge all of you now to start looking at yourselves and looking at where you can start to easily see, kind of go for the low-hanging fruit first, and easily see where you can see any of your personal patterns that exist within these archetypes, and then do those patterns, in your opinion, would they lead you to sort of grade yourself as being in the shadow side of that archetype or in the light or divine side? And then I also invite you to get other people's opinion, because other people's opinions might vary a little bit differently than yours, and then you can kind of like, get an average estimate of where you're actually at. And then just to kind of have fun with this stuff. Like, to me, it's, sometimes it's heavy duty work, but sometimes it's fun to kind of like, really get to know my archetypes and kind of almost play with them, and in a way to, I don't know, I guess I can't really think of an example, but I guess I'm just encouraging y'all to explore, play, and have fun. Alright, so I was trying to keep this video short. I don't know how successful I was at that. So, but I do hope that this material is helpful. I hope that you all will start putting your starter kit to work. If anybody has any comments, questions, always feel free to leave them in the comment section below, or you can reach out to me and you know, if you want to like try to book an appointment with me, private appointment with me, we can always do that. Absolutely. And yeah, so I think I might be getting another video up before Thanksgiving. Don't want to make any promises, but I'm gonna try, because I'm also like really feeling it. I'm in the ooey gooey juicy space of creativity right now, and content is just, ideas is just really exploding, so I kind of want to like ride that wave while it's here. So anyhow, I hope this was helpful, and we'll catch you in the next video. Aloha!